Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time to officially kick off the 2024 Fantasy Football season. Some of you are still drafting. You can still find my. Why don't we get this up here first? You can find my website, www.theffforge.com. Let's see here. Right at the top of the page where you cannot see, there is a rankings tab right about there, and you just click on that, and that brings you to my rankings page. And here you can get my most recent rankings. I will keep these up to date through like Thursday morning. If any major news happens, I will update these as quickly as possible, which is usually pretty quick. But there shouldn't be too many more alterations. I've kind of gone through, combed things. I'm as comfortable as I can be with where they're at currently. And if you are still drafting, of course, then you also need a cheat sheet for your draft if you're doing it in person, and here you go. Or if you're doing it online, whatever, you can still use this. This is a combination of my rankings and the most recent ADP, and I average those out in order to make a list that I think works for drafting, because it's not only about where I have them ranked, but it's also about where you can get them, and having them being a value or not reaching too highly. So that just helps to even things out there. Throughout the entirety season, we'll be going live every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Maybe that changes a little bit if Saturday's not successful. Maybe I'll try to change that to a Friday night thing. But I would like to go Saturday. That way we can get all the injury information from teams as close to up to date as possible Saturday evenings, sometime between the point where you're done with your chores for the day and before you need to hop in the shower to get ready to go out clubbing is when I'll be going live on Saturdays. I'll narrow that time in, but I'm thinking right around dinner time, around 5 o'clock maybe on Saturday afternoons, evenings, and I'll just go until the shows are dead then. Thursdays, 1.5 hours prior to kickoff, we'll start there, and then 2 hours prior to kickoff on Sunday mornings, I'll be live. All of these, for your start sit questions for the week, I'll be here and to chit chat, hang out, and etc. I think that covers all of our announcements, so let's just get into this. Should be pretty quick here, week one, especially for the waiver wire video, but I still wanted to put it out there, a little bit of a reminder of guys who are available, who I think maybe shouldn't be available in your leagues. And we're looking specifically throughout the entirety of the season. My cutoff point is going to be below 50% owned in ESPN leagues. That's just the easiest, best way for me to look it up, where, which guys are owned by teams and not. So that's kind of the cutoff mark that I will be utilizing. And before we get into the waiver wire, some of you might need to hit the waiver wires already. Hollywood Brown is expected to miss the first week. He has already been declared out, so you should be available to put him into your IR spot. Go pick up, I would say for now, go pick up a running back that in case during practice this week somebody ruins an ACL, maybe you get lucky enough, and that is the starting running back for the running back that you took. Somebody like Ray Davis out there in case James Cook were to get injured. Jordan Mason in case Christian McCaffrey were to get injured. I think are great options. Look for backups to guys on good teams, and of course, more so sure things for those backups that, hey, they are the guy that in case of injury, they get the work. So that's just a little piece of advice there on what you can do to take advantage of Hollywood Brown already being declared out, but you can't rely on him this week. That's going to bring us on to my quarterbacks, and for each of these positions, I've given 2 or 1 for the tight end position. The guys who I think are a little bit low in ownership, and then 1 deeper for deeper leagues. And for the quarterback position, I think Trevor Lawrence, I understand it. I understand the concerns, but I do think that he is a good backup to have, better than some of the other backups that are owned out there. So if he's available for you, if you don't love what you did in the draft, go check it out. Maybe you didn't realize that he's still available, and then you're like, oh, you know what, I will take him as my backup. I think as the season goes along, especially, I think there will be a shot for Trevor Lawrence to have a better season than he did last year. And we know that that's possible. Matt Stafford, another guy, we know that he's going to be pretty good in fantasy. The main thing about the ranking of Matt Stafford for most of us was just the concern about a possible injury, but he's had a healthy offseason. he should be owned in leagues. He's going to be good. The team's offense will be good. They're going to have to put up points every week. Basically, their defense probably isn't quite there yet, even if they overperform again. Still very young, experienced, not like ultra talented, concerns there. So Matt Stafford's a great option to have as a good backup quarterback, I would say. And then deeper leagues, all these guys are gone. A lot of quarterbacks get held on in your league, whatnot. I think that Will Levis is a solid bet. I think that Will Levis offers you a high ceiling, which it never hurts to attack. And, you'll know week 1, week 2, whether it's worth holding him on your roster any longer. But 8.5% owned there for Will Levis, obviously on the lower end, makes sense. I'm not running out to add him onto my squads. Now, but I don't, live in a league that's I need to. Let's bring us on to the running back position. Running backs to own, possibly. Depends your league, depends the settings on how much I say you need to attack these guys, get them off of your waiver wires. But Antonio Gibson should be a solid bye-week fill-in emergency flex kind of option, emergency running back kind of option, whatever, emergency starter throughout the season, especially if you're in full PPR, especially not if you're in standard league formats. But thinking he could have a very Zeke-like type of year in New England again this year. So that was a useful role for fantasy points. It wasn't nothing. And there's got to be rosters in a lot of leagues. It might not be your roster, but there's a roster that should probably have Antonio Gibson sitting at the back end of the bench. Let's bring us on to Jalen Wright, who I think is one of the more high-end backups to own. I've been saying this for a while in the offseason. Earlier on in the offseason, I was lower on him because I wasn't thinking about it, I think, correctly, hopefully. Part of the reason he rose up in my rankings is I think a lot of people think that, he's the third running back. He needs 2 injuries to happen in front of him in order for him to get enough starting work, enough work in order for us to use him in fantasy football. I don't believe that's the case. If either Raheem Mostert or Devon Achane go down, Jalen Wright comes in and takes up a lot of that work. The reason behind that is if Raheem Mostert goes down, there's a reason that they drafted Jalen Wright a year after they drafted Devon Achane. And that's because, and this is also proven last year, Devon Achane, smaller, lighter guy, he's at a higher risk of injury. And last year, he did get injured a few times pretty easily. So there is concern about that. They want to limit his workload. They don't feel comfortable being able to give him all of the work. That's why they brought Jalen Wright in immediately. He can come in and offset that work to the same extent as Raheem Mostert. I don't know, maybe a little bit less so in that event, but still enough that given the type of player Jalen Wright is, which is closer to Devon Achane, he doesn't necessarily need all the volume in order to be successful in fantasy football. And in this offense, we've already seen these running backs can find some lanes to get some good yardage in often enough. If Achane goes down, I mean, he's the natural Achane replacement, so I think he just comes in and takes the Achane role up in that case. They spoke highly of Jalen Wright in the offseason. Maybe I'm a little bit off base with this, but I think he's one of the very valuable backups to have. Only 22.6% owned. And then Jordan Mason, getting up there in ownership, almost 15% owned, but once again, the running back role in San Francisco, time and time again, has been very valuable. And if Christian McCaffrey goes down, Jordan Mason's going to be one of your more sure bets at being fantasy relevant. You could just toss him in there without too much question in any given week that Christian McCaffrey's not playing. It's going to bring us on to the wide receivers here. Khalil Shakir, I think not enough people taking a chance on him. This isn't some sure bet. 45% owned. I understand it. I do think that there are rosters in your league where I think the last quarterback on their roster is not as good of, a bet as taking a chance on Khalil Shakir, and this goes doubly more so in full PPR leagues. He's all the more valuable in that kind of league. He could be a really good fantasy asset this year. There's a chance at that, and he's sitting on a few too many waiver wires for my comfort. Then when you look at Romeo Doubs, Third-year wide receiver, second year with Jordan Love. It's Jordan Love's second year, only about 36% owned. I think he's been a little underappreciated, thought about, drafted this season. Definitely a good guy to have off the back of your bench who could end up being very good for fantasy as well. Standard format, whatever, it doesn't matter. Standard format, I would put him probably above Khalil Shakir. In fact, even half PPR, I might have him ranked ahead of Shakir. Somebody who just hasn't gotten a lot of talk this offseason, but he's definitely not somebody that's a bad bet. And then Josh Downs, we saw a definite connection between him and Anthony Richardson in a small sample size last year. He has been struggling with his health this offseason. That is generally a concern of Josh Downs. He is a smaller dude, and he's physical, and so he gets himself maybe a little bit more into situations, unlike a Tyler Lockett, who's always taken really good care of his body. But when Josh Downs is playing, there's a chance that he'll be really good. Once again, more so even for full PPR types of formats here, a nice high floor kind of guy. Very possible for Josh Downs. Less of a sure thing. That's, there's a reason his ownership is at 12%. But I do think he's a solid bet in full PPR leagues. Depending on who you have on the back end of your roster, I might like him more myself. You can always check out my preseason rankings to find out for sure if you have any concern about who you're holding on the back end of your roster. That's bring us on to the tight end position here. Noah Fant, I've been talking about it all offseason. This offense likes to use their tight ends. The Ben Grubb system and Noah Fant fits the type of tight end that they like to use. I think there's a very much breakout chance here for Noah Fant. Again, recent years, he just wasn't very involved in the offense. He had better rookie season, second year, maybe not rookie, but second, third year seasons than he has while he's been with Seattle. His production with Seattle has consistently gone down year after year. The previous regime there just didn't utilize him very much. Still, a first-round high-end talent. He's going to get a chance here to be very involved, and I think there's a solid chance that he'll be a pretty darn good tight end, and definitely more owned than this by the time that we get to the end of the year. So I like him as a second tight end to take a shot on, sleeper type of tight end. And you really want to go deep for a sleeper here, Zach Ertz. 2.1% owned. I understand it. Nobody's talking about him. He's going to be the starting tight end for Washington. I don't foresee the third, fourth round rookie tight end overseeding him without any kind of injury situation. I don't know when the last time a number 2 tight end has outscored a number 1 tight end, but I can't think of a situation where that's ever happened in fantasy. I'm sure it has somewhere, but yet Sanat goes higher than Zach Ertz. It's just one of those things that's happened this offseason, and I think it's wrong. I think Zach Ertz will be okay, especially in full PPR, just off the off chance Jaden Daniels could rely on him heavily. Zach Ertz has a history with Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator there in Washington, where he was definitely a back-end starting number 1 tight end there. He's a little bit older, a little bit more injured. They're coming off of injury. But I think there's a lot of reasons to think that he, once again, could be right in that role, top 14, 15 at least tight end, and he's not getting drafted anywhere near there. I think he's a really, safe bet even. Maybe not as super highest ceiling in the world, but to have at the back end of your roster as a second tight end in case emergency. I think he'll be solid. That brings us on to the DST options here. A couple teams who I think have been underappreciated in this offseason. Number 1 would be the Buffalo Bills for sure. Only 22% owned. Last year they suffered a lot of injuries, and they still remained as a very good defense. They have very good coaching there. They've done a very good job of drafting, and those guys have been asked to step up. And last year, they did step up, and they continued to be a really good defense. And I see no reason why that's not going to happen again. I know they got rid of a couple of pieces, but you look at the names of who they got rid of, you're looking at guys who were getting older, guys who were getting less productive. And once again, we saw this last year that some of the guys that they asked to step up did step up, and that's, I'm sure, part of the reason that they were more comfortable getting rid of some of those common household names that we all knew. I think it's going to be a good defense, and the schedule for them is pretty nice overall as well when I did my schedule work on these DSTs. So they were pretty high up in my DST list, but there's just been this general narrative that the Buffalo Bills are going to suck this year, and I think that has hurt. And the losses of household names has just hurt the image of them, but that this ownership will go up, I'm almost certain. Houston Texans, this is a bet on the coaching staff. This is a bet on how much they improved last year and how much more we think that they could improve this year and literal improvements that they've done. I'm surprised that there hasn't been some sort of underground swelling for the Houston Texans defense. My only concern with it is that this is going to be one of the better offenses, and so that puts more pressure on the defense when you have a good offense. But it also creates more opportunity for interceptions and whatnot. So it kind of works two ways. We'll see which way it ends up working for Houston, but 16% owned I think feels a little low. And Las Vegas, I totally understand it. Think of the history of the Raiders, and it's been a long, poor history as of late, especially. But their defense did do quite well last year. I do expect it to do well again this year. I do expect their offense to make it easier on the defense in many ways. Teams are not going to be thinking that they have to put up 30 points in order to beat Las Vegas. So, tempo, passing compared to running, all that's just going to be on the lower end. The necessity for offense is to have a big explosive play against Las Vegas just isn't going to be there. Going to be tighter games, I believe, and I think that makes for a defense that could be, a solid baseline in terms of the floor. And then you add in some of the pieces that they added this offseason, and that front seven has a chance of being really good, but at the very least, will have some pop weeks where you're getting a lot of sacks, putting a lot of pressure, you're getting balls that are just going to be floating up there. The secondary is going to have good opportunities to get some picks, etc. So I think another defense that I've liked this offseason. I don't have them right now because people weren't drafting the Buffalo Bills, and I had Buffalo Bills ahead of Las Vegas by one spot. But they're a defense that I just won't be surprised if they do good. So that is it for your week 1 waiver wire announcements, everything. Freaking congratulations. So exciting to have the season starting. And if you have any questions on should you drop somebody, should you make a trade or whatever, just drop them down in the comments and I will get to them when I see them. And I hope to see you Saturday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, all the above. And good luck this week. All right. That feels good to say. Peace out, guys.